concept of Pan-African nationalism is a unification of political and economic power. A unification of political and economic power. We do not unify with aliens, regardless of their religious or economic background. Our economic power must be totally ours. So the Democratic Party has nothing for black people. It may have something for Barack Obama, but it has nothing for those who are the descendants of the enslaved, which he is not. Our political power necessitates that we have political action committees, political unions like the Marcus Garvey, the Negro People's Political Union started by the Honorable Marcus Garvey in the 20s. We should not be looking to elect a black president of a white racist nation. That makes no sense. America exists for the proliferation of white racism. So if you want to put a black face on the White House, all you're doing is making the chief spokesperson for white racism a black face. It doesn't eliminate white racism. It only puts the silver fist in a velvet glove. So what we do not need is a black president. I know a lot of you Barack Obama fanatics don't want to hear that. But why in the hell would 20% of a nation want to put one of their own in an office to rule over 80% of whites? For a black person whose group is a minority amongst a European majority, if they are to become president, they can only do what? Execute the will of the race that rules. If you do not understand global white supremacy, you will never understand American politics, because the heart and soul of American politics is white racism. So whether John McCain wins or Barack Obama wins, white supremacy ultimately wins every single presidential election. We do not need a black president. We need black political power. We do not need a black face to rule over whites. We need black influence to be able to use our leverage to get what we need as we seek to build up independent black communities in America and throughout the world. Economically, the Korean has to get out of our community. Excuse me as I sip some water here. Some good Senegalese water, and it doesn't make you sick, as so many of you told me before I got here. But anyway, our economic power must be consolidated. We need black banks who are not going to use the money to finance black people who want to move outside of black communities. But we need black banks to finance black infrastructure in the United States and then throughout the world. Black people in America have to get our own act together, because once we get our act together, once we serve as an example to African communities throughout the 7 continents, you will see a resurgence of true independent African unity, true independent African struggles, not flag and anthem independence that exists now around the world, but a true independent political and economic independence. We will see that flourish throughout the world as soon as black people in America get our act together. But we must get our act together. We need pockets of economic power. Power is more important than authority, because power tells those in authority what to do. For example, in the case of Barack Obama, if he is chosen by white supremacy to sit in the White House, he will not execute your will, his will, or even the will of the white people. He will execute the will of the Bilderbergers, the Rothschilds, the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. Those are the wills that Barack Obama will effect. They do not have authority, but they have power. Power is more important than authority, because power does not yield to any sort of politically organized protocol. Power exists to achieve its own ends. And once we have thoroughly organized ourselves, our economic and political power will bring us so much progress. I've always made the argument that the reason that African people struggle so much is because we're not organized. We give white supremacy too much power. Granted, it is our #1 enemy. Granted, it has created AIDS. Granted, it has destroyed African infrastructure on an international scale. But yet and still, the reason why white supremacy continues to wreak havoc throughout the world is because we're not organized. All white supremacy is pan-European nationalism. Pan-European nationalism coupled with an evil intent to see every gene type except its own eradicated from the planet. Pan-European nationalism runs this world. And the only way you're going to combat it is with Pan-African nationalism, not domestic black nationalism. In fact, our black nationalist groups in America are of little use on an international sense because they can't see beyond the borders of the 50 states of America. And that's why if you are a Pan-African nationalist, you are automatically a visionary because you see beyond the 50 states of America. You see a natural, cultural, historical, economic, and political shared interests, common identity between you and our brothers and sisters here in Senegal, Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, and throughout the world. And I want to send peace and blessings to my brothers in Nigeria, who I'll see, God willing, in a few days, and to my brothers and sisters in South Africa, Ethiopia, and throughout the world and the globe. But we must begin to foster self-love, self-respect, and honor. Let's talk about honor, because most of our black leaders today have very little honor. Honor is an internally generated set of principles to which you are so committed that the only way that you would abandon them is when your life is taken. In fact, you never abandon them, because even if your life is taken, you never yet yielded against those principles. We must have honor. Honor is an extreme form of integrity. In fact, the two words can almost be used interchangeably, and I hope you can all still hear me. There's an imam giving a call to prayer here in Senegal, large Islamic population here in Senegal. But nonetheless, without honor, if you can't trust Brother Umar to do what's in the best interest of African people when no one's around watching me, I am useless. If I can't trust you to do what is in the best interest of African people when I'm not watching you, or someone else from the community is not watching you, you're useless. We cannot babysit one another, black people. We cannot babysit one another. The jealous idiots who killed Malcolm, and the jealous idiots who helped to set up King, and the jealous idiots who helped get Marcus Garvey deported, and the jealous idiots who did not stand beside Medgar Evers, and the jealous idiots who had Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba deposed, the jealous idiots who helped set up Steve Biko, okay, the jealous idiots who helped frame Queen Mother Winnie Mandela. These people have no honor. Most other races take honor for granted because they have never faced the destruction of African self-love that African people have faced systematically around the globe, be it in America or in Africa. Our love has been stamped out. Our loyalty has been stamped out. Our integrity has been taken from us, snatched out. And so now we have to rebuild it. So other races have never been without honor since their initial inception thousands of years ago. White people have always had honor towards other whites. Arabs have always had it. Asians have always had it. You cannot pay a European to sell out his race. You cannot pay an Asian to sell out his race. You cannot pay an Arab to sell out his race. But the African can be influenced to sell out other African people. And that is one of our biggest problems. When you look at most of our national leaders in America, in fact, nearly every last one of them has sold us out. Every last one of them. In fact, as the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey once said, the traitors of a race are normally confined to those who are of the lowest status. But in the African race, our traitors are the best trained and the ones who are the most highly placed within our system. Why is that? Because the leaders of the race have always been used against the masses. Let me say that again. When you study the political history of African people, our leaders have always been used to sell out the masses of our race. We have to be crystal clear. So the reason why we're not making progress in America has nothing to do with the power of white racism. It has everything to do with the lack of honor and loyalty by our multi-millionaire leaders towards their poor constituency. Black leadership in America today is a business. Most of your black leaders are getting rich off giving marches and speeches and protests, and some of them won't even show up when you need them unless you got enough money or enough TV stations there to help nurture their ego. So we have to be crystal clear that without honor, without us being able to be loyal to our race, without being supervised by members of the race, we're not going to get anywhere. The fifth principle, Pan-African nationalism. The fifth was a unified economic and political power. I believe we covered that inshallah, God willing. I think we covered that. But that speaks to a unified economic and political base. Independent trade unions, independent banks, independent savings and loans institutions, independent businesses of every kind, independent hospitals, independent schools, independent airlines, independent ships. And in the issue of ships, as we talk about collective economic and political unity, the Honorable Marcus Garvey was laughed at by leaders at the beginning of the last century because he dared to put ships on the water. But I want black people to know and to be aware that 90% of what you eat, wear, and use comes to you by way of ship. Most of what you get is not flown in by airplane. Most of what you use is shipped in by steamliner. So black people still have a need for an independent shipping line. We must float another Black Star Line steamship corporation. And if God gives me the power, that is something I would like to see up and running before I breathe my last air. And I hope that I breathe my last air here in Africa. But nonetheless, our economics must be independent. White people do not share economic power with blacks. White people do not share political power with blacks. One of the secret teachings of white supremacy is that you do not share power. White supremacy means supreme, being on top. Being on top. In fact, I'm going to have to do a whole presentation on the ideology of white supremacy, because we still don't understand white supremacy. Even though we have been the chief victims of it for hundreds of years, we still don't understand white supremacy. Some of us think we can start businesses with white people. Some of us think we can coexist economically and politically with white people. You don't understand white supremacy. Barack Obama doesn't even understand white supremacy. He probably does now, okay? Because there's a lot you don't know about these political campaigns that's going on behind the scenes. And I'm quite certain he's not liking the fact that he's being told what he has to say, where he has to say, and how he has to live. I bet you Mr. Barack Obama, Barry Soweto, as he was born, understands white supremacy now.